Well, I'd like to welcome you.
Thank you. It's great to be at UWM.
The University of Wisconsin, of course, is no stranger to you.
No, I've been here before.
Yes. Also in Milwaukee, I
Yes,
take it?
Milwaukee, yes,
Right.
and in Madison.
And in Madison.
Right.
Because it was our press that published your memoir, your book.
Right, and my eldest boy went to University of Wisconsin in Madison too.
Very
so
good.
Spent a lot of time in Madison and Wisconsin, yeah.
And obviously Milwaukee is more German than Madison, right?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Ein bisschen.
Yes, I'm schon, etwas, nicht? Yes. So it's lovely to have you here.
It's great to be here.
And you've clearly done very interesting things in this memoir, or how would you define the genre?
I can say it's a mix of memoir, mystery, and travelogue.
Yes.
Yes, as I was conceptualizing the book, I thought having written memoir before, I didn't want it to be just another memoir, and it's because I also write mysteries, I wanted to weave that element in, and then, I wanted travel to be part of it, because it was a natural part of it, but I also didn't want to stint on that and feel that I couldn't give myself to that genre.
Yes.
So it's a mixture of all three.
And you have certainly succeeded.
Thank you.
You have claimed territory that I actually don't think has been claimed by German Jewish writers.
I don't think anybody else has written a book quite like it. I mean, authors say that all the time.
Yes.
But I don't know any other child of survivors who's gone on this kind of journey.
Yes.
A child of survivors who writes, obviously.
Yes. And you have dared to claim territory that has, in a sense, been untouched, unexplored, and taboo. And that in and of itself is huge. So it is a new Lebensraum.
That's a complicated term.
Of course it is, and I obviously use it very, very carefully.
Yeah.
But I see this as a reverse in many ways of what in fact happened in the 30s and 40s. And I find that aspect of your work fascinating.
Well, that's interesting to me that you use Lebensraum, because I think one of the difficulties for children of survivors is they feel they really don't have enough room in which to live. Their world is very claustrophobic. It's bounded by paranoia, fear, and history that's not really theirs. It's their parents' history, but it becomes theirs by inheritance. And so they struggle to find a way to have a life that is more open, many of them, and not all of them succeed. I mean, a friend of mine, for instance, has never even told her mother that she smokes. And, she's afraid to shock or upset or surprise her mother in even the smallest way.
Yes.
Of course, I think your mother knows. Mothers always know these things.
Anyway,
yeah. So
as your own dear mother knew a lot.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That comes through very, very clearly in your recreation of your mother, who emerges as a fascinating woman, a woman of deep reticence.
Yep.
A woman of deep reticence.
Even though she spoke so much,
yes.
So
that's no contradiction.
I know it's not, but it makes her a more fascinating character. I would like to write something, but I'd actually like to put her in a novel. I'd like to make her the heroine of a novel at some point. But again, that the structure would be complicated, and I'm still thinking it out.
You'll do it.
I could, projects that I never thought I'd do.
Nothing would surprise me. Nothing would surprise me.
Well, I think she'd like it. She was very literate, and she loved my writing and always encouraged me.
Yes. I had to think of what Adenauer said in the 40s. He spoke about the mercy of a later birth, die Gnade einer späteren Geburt. And as I read your deeply poignant memoir book, I thought the children of survivors know no such mercy.
Oh, that's so true. And because their parents had a normal childhood, but they themselves did not. And it's the irony is when they come to realize that their parents grew up in a different world where they weren't bounded by trauma.
That's right.
And so their parents are, can be guilty for inflicting this on their children, not wanting to, even when they try to protect them from it, they're still creating an emotional reality that's just very complicated to negotiate. And so it's, they do their best, but in these circumstances, their best is often not enough.
Yes. But you have a burden of history that is quite different.
Yeah.
And I think in this memoir, you go to Germany, you go to places that were for your mother and for your father a terminus,
yes,
not a destination.
A terminus.
And I think there is an extraordinary difference, and you have captured that and captivated that in such a way that these places will never be the same again, not only for yourself, but for your readers. That Magdeburg,
that's what I hope, yeah.
Magdeburg will be forever a terminus and Fabrik.
Yeah.
And I think that also is an extraordinary achievement in this memoir.
And you never know what you're going to achieve when you start out to write a book. You only know that you have to write it, and
yes,
and you find it, and it finds you, and somewhere in the middle, something is born.
Yes, that has happened.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you go to Munich,
yes, Munich,
your voice falters slightly because you are dealing there with stones.
Yes,
even though they do not become reality, they are still Stolpersteine.
Yeah, the stumbling stones, yep.
Indeed. And I wonder if you could talk about your mixed emotions, because you're honest enough to say that you really don't know how to cope with that. You can understand both sides, why these stones were not reclaimed.
Mm-hmm.
And
right, the stumbling stones that mark places all around Germany where Jews and other people were taken off,
that's right,
resided, and literally you stumble over them when you walk, and these are memorials to make people realize that somebody lived in this house and that
that's
house.
right.
But in Munich, they didn't. The town council or whatever voted against it or refused to have them there, which is, ironic, or painfully ironic, given what Munich meant in terms of the Nazi party. So,
but why is it a struggle for you?
For me, the struggle is not about Munich. The struggle is more that, I can. When I first heard about them, I could imagine my mother and father saying, this is a memorial, a little stone in the ground that people are going to walk on. It wasn't enough that they walked on us during the war.
Yes.
Not getting the artistic and emotional impact of them. And so, but this is a problem with all people whose parents were born elsewhere outside of the country. I mean, you hear this counter narrative of what life should be like. It doesn't have to be Holocaust survivors. When your child is American, your child is very different from you are, and it has a very different sense of things. But here's both voices, what America says and what the old country says. And so that's a mix.
Why do you think you like Munich so much?
It was a surprise. I'm still trying to figure it out. I think, but part of it is practical. I had 3 full days there, and to have 3 days on a writing, on an author book tour where you're not...
Is a luxury.
Yeah. Even to have 1 day off is amazing. So I was able to relax. I was able to write. I was able to reflect on what had been happening to me in Germany. And I could, for long stretches of time, actually feel like a tourist, not feel like an author on tour or a Jewish son of Holocaust survivors. I could just feel like a tourist going to see a museum or going to a chateau, a palace, and observing that, and could take myself out of my usual frame of reference in the tour. So, and being
you were on your own.
Yeah, being alone. Yes.
Did you like that?
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
That's very, very interesting.
When you're on tour, you are constantly surrounded by people.
And you're adulated.
Yeah, well, but it's it's not so much about that. It's more the strain of being a performer. You're on stage when they pick you up at the train. When they take you to your hotel, when they pick you up for dinner, when you do your performance, your reading and talk, when you go out afterwards for drinks. I mean, you have to be careful about what you say. It's, you are very public.
Yes.
And authors can be very public, but the writing itself is very private. So you're taking something that is ostensibly meant for one individual to read at a time, and you're turning it into a public act, a public performance.
Yes.
I'm an extrovert. I was in theater, so these things are not
unnatural.
Alien,
yes.
But they still take a lot of energy and effort. So to have a few days off and not have to perform, and just to walk into a restaurant and eat a dinner by myself,
and practice your German. So obviously you enjoy German.
I love it. Well,
because the Yiddish connection.
No, not so much.
But didn't you speak Yiddish?
Well, I spoke Yiddish, but Yiddish has so many false cognates with German, and there's just it's actually less close in some ways than you might think. I mean, I felt like I had to sort of let go of Yiddish to learn German, and to learn enough German to travel. So that felt different. I know some people don't agree, but for me, sort of German was something that I was taking on as a tool, as a pleasure, as a inquiry, and Yiddish.
And to read German authors, presumably.
Well, yes, I've read a couple of things in German, and I actually have done some of my readings in German over there in the last two book tours. Yeah, and that was erstaunlich. I mean, to read my own work in another language and not feel that it was alien, but actually feel this is mine and I claim it. Was the place I never.
So wonderful achievement for you.
I was blown away. I didn't think I could do it. I had a tutor for a couple of months each time, a German tutor at home who came every week, gave me lots of homework, and then we practiced. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, it's not going to be half-assed. It's going to be good.
Right.
Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. And then, so this last tour sponsored by the State Department, when I think one city where I thought I was speaking in English said, well, would you do your reading in German? I said, well, yeah, no problem. I'm doing a few others in German. And I think my best reading of all, one was in Munich again at a synagogue, was the best one in English, but the best one maybe of the whole tour was the very last in German.
Where was that?
In Gießen, north of Frankfurt. Yeah, and I just felt like I was soaring in the words. And, when I asked the professor who had sponsored me, how did it go? He just looked at me goggle-eyed because he couldn't believe it. And, they thought, Germans don't expect anyone to learn German, especially Americans in the English. So if you even order a meal in German, they're kind of surprised.
Yes.
And if you have a conversation in German, that's really surprising. Then for me to introduce my work in German and then do a reading in it, with a not bad accent, they are very surprised. So, but to me, it was a challenge that I wanted to take on. I've also never been asked to do something in another language anywhere. I read in France, and I haven't read in French Canada, so this was the only place anyone ever asked, could you do it? And I thought, well, can I? I don't know. I'd have to work at it. And so I did. And I literally practiced it every day for about 2 months. Every day I practiced my reading. I read it to get the intonation down because it's such a different language. And
I'm quite sure they were very impressed and
I think they were,
and also grateful that you had done that.
I think they were. I think, and I answered questions in German when I could.
Yes.
Even just to say, "Das ist ganz kompliziert," that's very complicated, and then shift. just, I felt as if I could come halfway or as far as I could to meet them, because I couldn't assume every audience spoke English, especially in Eastern Germany, because they spoke in Dresden,
yes.
Leipzig, Magdeburg, Dessau, and these are cities where Russian would have been the second language. Yeah.
But you come to them, Lev, as an educated man, and I would think that they probably call you a Herr Doctor.
I don't know what they called me.
I'm quite sure they would do. I mean, there is a
when you make a hotel reservation over there, if you say you're professor or head doctor, then
you have
things go a lot better.
So, and that is also you call your book My Journey.
Right.
That is your journey,
right.
And of course, at a certain very important level, it is not the journey of other people.
Not at all.
I mean, you go there as an author, a very prolific, a very successful author, and in fact, one whose works have been translated into German, and that is not necessarily standard for at all. So you come there in a very privileged position.
Plus, you also come there as into a culture that respects artists
absolutely
much more than
here.
Oh yeah, on 2 tours ago, I received so many presents at every place I went to: bottles of wine, books, CDs, calendars, chocolates. I mean, tons of chocolate. I had to send boxes home twice, because there was no way I could carry it in my suitcase. And also, but what was funny was I thought, well, at one point I thought, I somehow have collected 4 bottles of wine. I can't drink them myself and it won't be fun. And I thought, well, I will distribute them as I go along. So I got to the next city and I said, well, this is for you, to my host.
More.
Yes, exactly. They were so, they had already planned a gift for me, like a museum catalog.
Right.
So now they had to give me something else. So it was very funny. It felt almost Japanese, with the bowing and then more bowing and then,
Right. Well, for the rest of us, we are lucky we get a kind look, of course.
Yes.
But you are clearly in a very privileged position on that, and
you're right.
And obviously, as you read your book, you're very aware of that, and of course, I also had to think, as someone who is in Germanistic and spent my professional life there, of what was written by survivors in German, or those who opted to go back or else stay in exile. And I had to think of a poet called Ilse Blumenthal-Weiss.
I don't know.
And she is a survivor. She lost her husband and son. And later in the 60s, she was in this country and she was writing in German. And when asked later in an interview why the themes of her poetry were in fact so dark, her answer was, I wanted to write about the sun, but the night kept breaking through. And when I read your memoir, I saw in your writings, I saw your soul as someone, I would say, as constitutionally capable of such feeling and of joy. There is an irrepressible sense of life and wanting to live and wanting to explore more at whatever cost it is. And
it's risky.
I was very touched by that. I was struck by that you seem to have an enormous capacity to feel and, in fact, to have joy. And
well, my mother always said that I had her brother's sense of humor. Her younger brother's sense of humor.
I think there's something in that, in your DNA that definitely spills over into your work. You're obviously a very creative writer, and you have a wonderful sense of observation. You are a flâneur. You like to stroll and you like to observe. right or wrong?
Yes, I do, absolutely.
But
and I was also able to make jokes when I was over there, and that was, I think, people were not used to anyone being able to talk about any serious issue connected to the Holocaust in a way that was respectful, but
yes,
still kind of lighthearted occasionally.
yes,
You know, I was making fun of things, but
yeah,
and that happens here, especially in the U.S. People
yeah.
are surprised that I can, you know, frame things in a way that's not always so deadly gloomy.
That's right. But I would see what I know of your work, and obviously one looks forward to reading more. But as someone who felt obliged to write about the dark, but the sun kept coming through.
Oh, I like them. Yeah.
And
I think that's probably true.
It may not be completely true, but I see it in your ability for transformations. And that is quite Goethean, is it not?
Oh, yes, very much.
I mean, that's very much part of German Bildung and the great humanistic tradition, and always streben, always
striving.
And so I would say that nothing will surprise me about you. I don't know where you're off to next. I wonder about further visits to Switzerland or to Austria, to German-speaking Europe.
Well, somebody in Munich wants to make a documentary next time I'm over there, so this may take a few years to get organized, but I would be very willing to do that. I'd be happy to be part of that.
Yes. Well, it's been a great pleasure
thank you so much.
to talk to you and
Vielen Dank.
Bitte schön. And I trust you'll come back again.
I would love to.
More books under your own.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.